Today, I'm going to show you how to use AI to write programs and scripts to help you manage or even modify your Windows install. And we might have a little bit of fun too. Stay tuned. So a few weeks ago, I showed you how to remove all AI from Windows 11. I might have given you the impression in that video that I was personally against AI, but that's simply not the case. My only issue is having AI implemented into places where I don't think it belongs. One of those places is the operating system. Because AI in and of itself is actually quite useful, and it's kind of creepy how useful it is. So today I'm going to show you how to use it to your own benefit to create your own custom programs and scripts. And these are not going to be simple scripts either. But first, I got to pay some bills. So check out today's sponsor. Are you still running Windows 11 unactivated because the license just costs too much? Then you should check out today's sponsor, VIP-SCDKey, where you can get a valid Windows 11 license for around $20. Stop dealing with that stupid watermark and actually be able to change your desktop background with a valid license for Windows 11. Just go to the link in the description below and pick up a valid Windows 11 license key. During checkout, use the code CyberCPU for a 25% discount. Once you have your key, go to your activation settings in Windows 11 and click the link that says Change Product Key. Enter the product key you just purchased and hit Activate. Now you don't have to deal with that stupid watermark. And check out the description for deals on not just Windows, but Office too. Now, on with the video. So AI, contrary to popular belief, doesn't have the ability to think, at least not what we would classify thinking. Instead, AI uses massive language models to make pattern recognition in order to respond to queries. It's essentially like autocorrect on steroids, so it's not using reason to respond to your queries. Instead, it's creating relevant responses to your queries based on the language model that it was trained on. In order for AI to think or reason, it would have to have consciousness and subjective experience. AI has no awareness, intent, or understanding. It just calculates and predicts based on your input. However, with that said, the algorithms and models used to train AI have gotten so complicated and so advanced that it can easily fool you into thinking that you're talking to a sentient being. At least sometimes. Other times, it sounds like it's just as knuckleheaded as your drunk uncle. But today, we're not going to be having a conversation with AI. You've probably already done that, and you've seen how impressive it is. Instead, today, we're going to be asking AI to write us code in order to create programs to perform tasks in Windows. The code that we're going to be using is a scripting language called Autoit. Autoit is a scripting language similar to BASIC that's really popular with computer techs because of its ability to automate tasks. Now, I've done a video on Autoit in the past, and this video isn't about Autoit specifically. It's just the compiler that we're going to be using to write code for today. However, the same principles would apply to any programming language. So you could even use these same principles to create bat files or even PowerShell scripts. So let's jump on the system and we'll get started. Okay, so here we are in Windows 11, and we're going to start out at the very beginning here. We're going to go ahead and download and install Autoit first. So to do that, we're going to go to this website here. I'll go ahead and have a link to this in the description below, but this is essentially autoitscript.com. So I'm going to go down, I'm going to download the latest version of Autoit, which is right here. We click on that. We're going to do the full installation here. We're going to throw this in our downloads folder. It should just take a second to download, and then we can open that up and close our browser. I'm going to extract this real quick. And then we're going to go ahead and install Autoit. And for the most part, you should be able to install this with the default settings. However, there's one thing we're going to change, and it's going to be for one of the programs that we're going to be doing later. And I'll explain why in a little bit. But we're going to go ahead and go through the install like you would any other program. And then this is the change that you would make. Right here it says use x86 tools by default. I actually want to use native 64-bit tools by default. And I'll explain why a little bit later in the video. It'll make sense later. However, this is the way I'm going to install it right now. And then we're going to go ahead and hit next. We're going to hit edit the script because honestly, that's just the way I like to use Autoit. Typically, when I get a script finished, I'll compile it as an executable, so you don't actually have to have Autoit on the computer in order to use it. So typically, when I'm opening a script, I'm opening it to edit it, not to run it. So you can set this to whatever you want. Go ahead and hit next. We're gonna hit next again, and the rest should be, for the most part, default. And it should take a second to install, and then we can move on. And we're gonna go ahead and uncheck Show Release Notes and hit Finish, and there we go, we have Autoit installed. Now, the AI that I'm going to be using in this video is Grok. However, these principles should apply to any AI model that you decide to use. You can use GPT, you can even use Copilot. I simply chose Grok because it's an extremely powerful AI and it's free. You simply need a Twitter account in order to access it, or an X account, or whatever it's called today. But unfortunately though, without a premium account, you only have a limited access to how many queries you can use. So you can only make a limited number of queries every 2 hours. But that should be enough for you to be able to follow this video. I personally went ahead and paid for Super Grok for this video because I kept running into the query limitation while testing for this video. Super Grok costs $30 a month, which is kind of pricey, especially since, if I understand correctly, the free Grok is exactly the same, but just has query limitations. With that in mind, I don't know that I could justify recommending you pay $30 a month for this service. But you do what's right for you. Just know that the majority of the research done for this video was all done with the free version, and I only upgraded to the Super Grok due to the usage limitations near the end of my research. So you should be able to follow this guide with the free version without any problems. Now, let's jump back on the system and get to writing some code. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and launch Chrome real quick. To open Grok, you just go to grok.com, and it's that simple. You can just start asking it questions. Now, the program that we're going to be making today is a program that will change the Windows 11 context menu into the classic context menu. So essentially, we're going to be telling Grok to make that program for us. So to start out with, I'm simply going to write create an Autoit script that will change the Windows 11 context menu to the classic menu. That simple. So what Grok is going to do is it's going to essentially write that program for you. And it breaks it off so you have this window right here that has the code itself for the program. So we're going to give it a second to write it. And then while it's doing that, we're going to look at what it says. Below, essentially, it reiterates what you've asked it to do. It gives you the link right here to the actual program itself. And then below it, it tells you how you can use the script and how the script functions. So from there, all you have to do is go ahead and click the download file right here, and it's going to download it as a text file. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw it in our documents directory, and we're going to have to name this. Instead of naming it a text file, we have to name it .au3 for Autoit. And then at that point, we can go ahead and hit save. And then from here, we can go ahead and open up our documents folder. And as you can see, we have our classic context menu right here. So if we double click on this, it'll open up the code that Grok wrote for us because we chose at the beginning to have it open the code instead of run the script. Now, if you want to test this script, all you'd have to do is go up here and hit Tools and Go. However, because this script writes to the registry, this is why we installed Autoit to default to 64-bit. So unfortunately, we can't run this program from the Tools menu because of this. So what we'll do is we come down to the actual code itself, we go ahead and right-click, and unfortunately, we have to hit Show More Options because we have the stupid Windows 11 context menu, and we want to compile the script as 64-bit. So once we do that, it'll go ahead and create an executable that's 64-bit for us. It's going to take a second to create it, and once it does, it'll show up right here in the Documents folder. Just like that. Now, for this program specifically, we have to compile the program as a 64-bit application for it to work. This is not a limitation with the AI or even a limitation with Autoit itself. This is a limitation created by Windows. Since the program we wrote modifies the Windows registry, Windows segregates access to the registry by 32-bit programs. It essentially it intercepts registry writes by 32-bit programs to another portion of the registry. If that happens, in this case, it will not create the registry key in the correct place to disable the Windows 11 context menu. So if you're going to write programs that modify the registry, they have to be compiled as 64-bit. Sorry, I don't make the rules. I guess Microsoft does. Now, during the research for this video, Grok actually did find a solution to the problem and got the program to work while compiled as 32-bit. However, there were other issues as well, and the easiest solution is to simply compile the program as a 64-bit program. So let's jump back on the system and see how it works. And then all we have to do is go ahead and click on it, and it should ask us for an administrator prompt, as it did. And we hit yes. It says this script will change the Windows 11 context menu to the classic style. Hit yes, and it did. And it tells you have to restart Explorer to apply the changes. And it goes ahead and restarts Explorer for you. And if we go down here and right click, as you can see, now we have the classic context menu, which is exactly what we asked it to do. However, we can get a little bit creative with it here. Let's say we want this program to be able to switch back and forth between the classic and the Windows 11 menu. So what we'll do is we'll make a button to switch between the Windows 11 context menu and the classic context menu. Go ahead and correct our spelling right here. Then hit enter. And what Grok will do is it will take the original program that it wrote for you and rewrite it, but this time with a button that'll switch between the two context menus. It'll take a second for it to write the code itself because this is a little bit more complicated now. And again, it reiterates what you asked it to do. And then once it finishes the code, it'll tell you how to actually use it. Now, while it's going through and writing this, we can go ahead and save this just like we did before. We're going to save this as a .au3 file. Go ahead and hit save. And then we're going to go ahead and launch into documents again. And as you can see, we now have a new script. We can go ahead and close Autoit here. If we want, we can open this up and see that that's the script that Grok just wrote for us. And again, we're going to right click. We're going to hit compile script as 64-bit. And it's going to take a second to compile. And once it finishes, it should show up. If it doesn't, just hit refresh. And like you can see, it shows up just like that. And we can go ahead and launch the program. Again, it asks us for user account control. And here you can say, switch to Windows 11 menu. So when we click switch to Windows 11 menu, it switches to the Windows 11 menu. And we can hit switch back to classic menu. And it switches to the classic menu. So now Grok has essentially made this program do exactly what we want it to do. But let's say we don't want it to automatically restart Explorer or any other feature that you decide you want to add to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it, we'll go ahead and close the program itself, and I'm going to tell it add a check mark for restarting Explorer. And so what it'll do is it'll modify the same program that it just made, but this time instead of automatically restarting Explorer, it's going to add a check mark to let us choose whether or not to restart Explorer. And it takes a second to write the code real quick, and then again, it'll tell you what it's doing, and it will go ahead and tell you how the script works once it finishes writing it. So it'll take a second to do that, and once it starts telling you how the script works, just like now, you can go ahead and save the script. So we're going to go ahead, same as before, we're going to go AU3, hit enter. Now it's going to want to replace that one because we already created that one before. Just go ahead and hit yes. We don't need the original. And then we're going to go back into our documents folder. I'm going to delete the original executable because we're going to compile this one again. And it'll take a second to compile, refresh the folder, and there we go. Go ahead and launch it. Hit yes to user account control. And as you can see, it went ahead and added the check mark. Now, what we can do is if we uncheck it and hit switch to the Windows 11 menu, it'll tell you that you need to restart Explorer for changes to take effect. However, I happen to know for a fact that you can switch to the Windows context menu without restarting Explorer. So we should probably build that functionality into the program itself. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. Go ahead and close our window here. And then what I'm going to have it write is I'm going to have it write only restart Explorer when switching to the classic menu. Restart is not necessary when going to the Windows 11 menu. And go ahead and correct our spelling here and hit enter. So now what it'll do is it'll modify the program to only restart Explorer when it's switching to the Windows Classic context menu, not when it's switching to the Windows 11 menu. And as you can see, it's every time we make a modification to the program, it takes longer for Grok to create the program itself. And that's because the program has become more complicated. But you can scroll through and you can look at all the code that it's used in order to get to the point where it's at just by scrolling through this screen right here. And then once it starts telling you how to use it, you can go ahead and save it. We're going to go ahead and do that right now. AU3. Replace the old one. Then from there, we're going to go ahead and launch our documents folder again, delete the original executable, and compile this one again. We have to hit show more options, compile as 64-bit. Gives it a second to compile it, then we're going to go ahead and launch it. So as you can see now, automatically, it's going to restart the Explorer when switching to the classic menu. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. And as you can see, we've now switched to the classic menu. However, now when we switch back to the Windows 11 menu, it just works. It doesn't even tell you anything. It just does what it does. Even though the restart check mark was checked, it still didn't restart it. However, this doesn't look like a very professional program. It actually looks kind of rough. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of modifications. The first one I'm going to do here is I'm going to go move the Restart Explorer check mark to an Options menu and add a button to manually restart Explorer. And hit enter. And now it should do exactly what we're telling it to do. So it's going to go through, it's going to create the program. It's going to take a minute, just like before, to create the program. And then once it does, we'll go ahead and test it out and see if it did what we wanted it to do. And like I said before, the more complicated the program gets, the longer it takes for it to fulfill what we've asked it to do. So it's going to take a while for it to actually write this program. But once you start seeing it tell you how to use it, just like now, we can go ahead and save it. So again, AU3, hit enter. Go ahead and replace the original. And then we're going to open up my documents, delete the original executable, and compile this one again. And there we go. We're going to go ahead and launch it real quick. And as you can see, we now have an options menu that tells us whether we want to auto restart to the classic menu. And we can also manually restart Explorer simply by pressing a button right here. And this is a pretty usable program, and you can add functionality to it simply by telling Grok to add more functionality to it. So as you can see, the AI here was able to create a functioning program in just a few minutes with just a few prompts explaining exactly what we wanted it to do. We could refine this program further by simply creating more prompts. We could even add functionality to it. For instance, we could add another button that disables web results in the start menu. In fact, we could create an entire program that tweaks the look and feel of Windows 11 simply by telling the AI to make it for us. But ultimately, we're still using Autoit for what it was designed for, to write scripts to perform functions within Windows. However, could we use Grok to write a game using Autoit? Turns out you can. Let's do it. Okay, so we're done with this. We can go ahead and close it. And for this, I'm going to actually create a new chat because we're going to be starting over with another program completely. And for this one, I'm going to create a tic-tac-toe game. So the first thing I want to do is tell Grok, create a tic-tac-toe game in Autoit that uses 9 buttons and change the buttons from blank to X or O, depending on moves. Then declare a winner once 3 in a row is detected. All right, so we're going to go ahead and create a simple tic-tac-toe game in Autoit and see how it comes up. So it's going to go ahead and write the code now, and like before, it's going to tell you what you've asked it to do. It's essentially just reiterating what you've asked it to do, or at least how it understood that. And then it writes the code and it tells you how to use the code. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and click download. For tic-tac-toe, we're going to rename this AU3. Hit save, and then we're going to have to open up my documents again and grab our tic-tac-toe game. Now, I'm going to go ahead and delete some of these other programs in here just to kind of clear up our workspace here. So we're going to right-click. We're going to hit open in this case because now this doesn't have to be a 64-bit program anymore. This is just something we're doing. So you can, if you want, launch a program straight from the compiler itself without compiling it as an executable. And for that, we're just going to go ahead and hit go, and here you have a tic-tac-toe game. So if we go ahead and play tic-tac-toe, as you can see, it essentially does everything we want it to do. However, it doesn't look very pretty, and it looks like there's no way to reset the board once you win. And that's all stuff that we can change. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. We're going to go back to Grok here, and we're going to tell it, make the buttons fill the screen and add a reset button to start a new game. And then what it'll do is use that prompt to modify the original program in the way that we've asked it to do. And it's going to take a little while to write the script again, just like before. And once it starts telling us how to use it, then we should be able to actually copy the code, or save the code rather, and compile it. And there we go. So once it starts writing how to use the code, we can go ahead and click here, save it again as .au3. It's going to ask us if we want to replace it. Go ahead and hit yes. And then we can go ahead and launch this again. We'll hit tools, go, and it looks like we have an error. So what Grok has done here is it's actually messed something up. So what you can do is, I'm glad this happened here so we can show this. But what we're going to do is we're going to highlight the error itself, just like that, copy it, and essentially all we're going to do is just paste the error code in and see if Grok can figure out what it did. And essentially, it did figure out what it did. It says the error occurs because the min function is not defined in Autoit. Autoit doesn't have a built-in min function, so we need to either use a comparison or include the math AU3 UDF, user-defined functions, to use the min. I'll modify the code to fix this by using a simple comparison with the minimum value. So essentially what Grok has done is it made a mistake, which is a little bit creepy if you think about it, but it's trying to correct that mistake with new code. So we'll see if it is able to do that. But once it finishes, now it goes ahead and tells us what changes have been made, and we can go ahead and save it now. So we're going to do that now, AU3. Hit yes to replace it, and then we're going to go ahead and go back into here, open this up, and launch it and see if it works. And it does. In fact, it's a much bigger game than I thought it was going to be. And if you scroll down here, you can still see that it has a reset button. So if we click here, there you go, X wins, and we can hit reset to reset it. However, this is way too big, and it's still kind of a little boring. So let's spice it up a little bit. So I'm going to close that, and we're going to go back here, and I'm going to tell it to make the game a quarter the size and make the X blocks blue and the O blocks red. and we'll see how that goes. We'll kind of give it a little bit of color so it looks a little bit better, and we'll see how it comes out. Now it's going to go ahead and write the code for us, just like before. And I'm going to go ahead and skip down into where it's finished the code, and then we'll move on from there. And here we go. We're going to go ahead and save this now as our tic-tac-toe.au3. Replace the original. And we'll go ahead and launch this by going to the Tools menu and hitting Go. And we have another error. So we're going to highlight this error here, paste it into Grok. And this can happen sometimes where it just makes problems. So right here, it says that the error badly formatted function statement typically occurs when Autoit, when a function is defined incorrectly. So this is another case where Grok simply made a mistake. So we're going to go ahead and let it fix the mistake, and hopefully the program will work the second time. So again, I'm going to skip ahead until this finishes. And there we go. Let's go ahead and save this real quick. And hopefully there's no more mistakes here, but we will find out in a second. We're going to launch this real quick. Go to Tools, hit Go. And we have our tic-tac-toe game. So now if we click on this square, it says X. We click here, we have O. However, the colors are not changing. So what we're gonna have to do is go back to Grok and tell it that the colors are not changing. So from here, we're gonna tell it the colors of the buttons are not changing when clicked. And what it will do is it will go through and try to find another way to be able to do that. So the issue is that the button colors blue for X and red for O are not changing when clicked, despite the set color text button function being called. This is likely because the WinAPI set color in Autoit doesn't reliably update the button's text color for GUI controls without additional handling. So we're gonna go ahead and let it finish this right here, and we'll see if it works the next time. And you might run into this from time to time where Grok just starts making code that doesn't quite work the way that it wants to, but all you have to do is just tell it that the functionality isn't the way you want it, and it will change it to make it work the way you want it to work. So now it's going ahead and it's telling us what changes have been made. We're going to go ahead and save this now. And we'll see if it works this time. So we'll hit Tools, Go. And once we hit X, okay, so it's changing the color of the X, not the color of the block itself. So that's another problem that we're gonna have on this thing. So essentially what you would do is just continue to ask it questions to change it. So in this case, apparently the AI misunderstood me in how it wants the colors changed. So in this case, you would have to tell it again that no, you want the buttons to change colors, not the text itself. However, what you can do with this thing is pretty powerful. And let me show you another game that I made. I actually made a clone of Tetris using this same method right here. And it works pretty good. As you can see, it not only has a way to be able to use Tetris like normal, but it also tells you what the next block coming up is. And it also has a leaderboard on here that I might have possibly spent way too much time playing the other day when I was creating it in order to do this video in the first place. But as you can see, it's a fully functional game that, believe it or not, is quite addicting. In fact, I should probably stop playing it. Otherwise, I'll never finish the video. So as you can see, there's lots of things that you can do with this AI. In fact, I spent several hours one night just asking Grok to write the most bizarre programs that I could come up with just to see if it would give me something. I didn't test these programs, but one of them included a Linux bash script that scrapes Craigslists for things on sale matching a list of keywords, and then cross-checks those same products on Amazon to see if the used products on Craigslist were cheaper than the new products on Amazon. Then it emails me the results every 24 hours. Grok was able to write every program based on every prompt I gave it. As you saw from the example here, I just showed you that it even created a pretty decent clone of Tetris in Autoit. In fact, it's so good, I think I'm going to leave it on my thumb drive. It's pretty addicting. The interesting part about this is because, as you probably already guessed, I've created these programs in Grok multiple times while doing the testing for this video. This wasn't the first time I sat down and told Grok to write these exact programs. Yet every single time I've asked it to write a program, it writes it slightly different. With the program that changes Windows 11 context menu, sometimes it writes the program to automatically restart Windows Explorer. And sometimes it writes the program with a prompt telling the user to restart Explorer manually. Sometimes it even names the buttons differently. In the tic-tac-toe example, it sometimes creates the grid of buttons to match the size of the UI, and sometimes it makes the buttons really small within the UI, like you saw in the example. One time, it completely randomly made the program change the color of the buttons themselves, and it was such a cool look that I ended up using that in other prompts when I created the program in other ways. In fact, you saw me try to do that here, even though it messed it up a little bit. Sometimes it even makes typos that cause the program not to run correctly. Yeah. That's right. It literally makes mistakes. And when you point out those mistakes, it catches them, apologizes for the mistake, and then rewrites the script without the mistake. Now, I expect humans to make mistakes. I don't expect computers to, but it acts like a person, and that's what makes it so creepy. Sometimes these mistakes were pretty big blunders too, like using Autoit functions but forgetting to include the libraries that those functions are located in. I have to admit, that is really creepy. And the AI is also able to troubleshoot problems within the code itself. When I first created the script that changes the Windows 11 context menu, I didn't know that Autoit had to be compiled as a 64-bit program in order to write to the registry. So each time Grok came up with the code for that specific script, it didn't work. I went back and forth and told it it didn't work, and it just kept trying different ways to write to the registry. It started with Autoit's built-in regwrite function, and when that didn't work, it ran regadd from the command prompt. When that also didn't work, Grok tried running the regedit program directly in order to add the keys to the registry, and that ultimately did work. Unfortunately, though, it was better to just compile the program as 64-bit and use the built-in regwrite function like we just did in this example. But this troubleshooting showed the AI's ability to kind of switch gears and try different methods. It was quite impressive. But go ahead and play around with it yourself and create some programs of your own. And let me know down in the comments below what type of program you had it create for you. And if you'd like to know more about Autoit, I did an entire video on it that you can check out right here. Now, I did that video quite a while ago, so it's nowhere near as good as my videos are today, but it's still a great program that every technician should use. Now, you can use it with AI. As always, you guys have a great day.